I have with me here the Lapbook 12.3. This is the latest laptop from Chuwi that's powered by the Apollo N3450. Now, unlike all of the models that I've looked at recently, they've all been 16:9 aspect ratio. This one's a little different, so it's got a 3:2 ratio screen, and in fact the same panel used in the Surface Pro, the 2017 model, or the Surface Pro 4. Now, it also has an SSD base, so you're able to increase the storage capacity. So if you're not happy with 64 gigabytes of eMMC storage 5 spec, then you can just slot in a larger SSD up to 512. I think it takes the 22x42 spec. It has 6 gigabytes of RAM, runs Windows 10, has wireless AC, and a full metal build. So let's have a look at it. So at the time of this video here, this is selling for around $319 US on GearBest. So a little more expensive than, say, the Laptop 14.1 or the EasyBook 3 Pro. But you have to take into account that you are getting a much better screen there with the Surface Pro 4 screen. So the seal has already been broken, so someone's probably gone in there and just done their inspection checks to make sure it's got no faults, hopefully. Okay, so it all slides out. Here we have the little box with the accessories. This is just like the Chuwi 14.1 and our laptop in the middle. So here we have just a little information leaflet. I'd say that's just the warranty card. Yes, it is, warranty card. Tablet pad, it says, even though this is a laptop. Some sort of quick start guide or something. That's all in Chinese. Not going to go into any detail with that. So accessories. This will be the charger. So they've given me, well, a European cable that came with that. So that's good. So normally you get just the US 2 prong, so I don't need a power adapter. So 12 volts, 2 amps is what that is rated to. That's a DC plug. And I think the diameter of this is 3 millimeters like the other ones. Okay, so full metal build on this. It looks a little bit thicker than I thought it would be. Just looking at the front of it there, the lid thickness at least. And feels a little bit heavy. I've got my scales here, so I'll just weigh that. I mean, the weight doesn't feel too bad. Certainly not the lightest. So it's 1.37 kilos, so almost 1.4. And the front here is, you can see, about 17 millimeters thick. And the rear of it, so we do have some plastic along the back here. This is for the antenna reception for wireless AC and Bluetooth. And the back here comes in at your 17.32. The lid here, we've got a Chuwi logo. Pressing down on that, it seems quite firm. I don't believe that if you put this in a bag with books that it's going to push the screen against the keyboard or anything. It's quite firm. And looking at the ports here on the right side, we've got a Kensington lock. This is the first time I've seen this on a Chinese laptop, at least the ones that I normally review. USB 2 port, shame that's not USB 3. We've got the 3.5mm headphone jack and then a micro SD card slot. And micro SD cards, let's have a look. They click in and sit relatively flush there with the rest of it. So hopefully that won't be knocked and come out in transit. So the bottom of the laptop, metal as well. This is screwed in place, 4 rubber feet, which are about 2 millimeters in height. 2 downwards firing speakers. This flap here is where you put in your SSD. I'm going to install my own SSD in here because I like the speed you get. It's quite a lot faster than those eMMC 5 specs. So all you need to do is undo that screw, which I've already done. Slot this in, so push it in place. And then screw that down. And put the lid back on, and you are done. Very quick and easy. Oh, and there is a second step. You have to go into the BIOS and then select your SSD as the boot drive, and then go ahead and install Windows onto that drive. And lastly, on the left side, status LED, the DC in there for charging, and a USB 3 port. Next to that, a mini HDMI out. Okay, so I haven't opened this up yet and taken a peek at the display, but I think it's glossy from looking at the press images. But hopefully it's going to be matte. Hopefully I am wrong here. So can we open it with one hand? Yes. No. Okay. And it is a matte display, which is good. So I was wrong there, but wow. Look at those massive bezels. That's a shame. It has a kind of look to it like the Acer Swift 3 or those MacBooks with that massive silver bezel on there. So the keyboard layout has most of the shortcuts, in fact all of them that I think most people would want. We have to use the function key for your page up and down and end, but there are controls for the volume, media controls, screen brightness controls, a dedicated print screen button, which is what I'm always after, and you'll notice that the location of the power button near the backspace is a little annoying, but everyone seems to be doing it. It has the same resistance as any of the other buttons too. You can of course set in Windows settings that when you tap it by mistake that it will do nothing. So it booted into Windows quite quickly with an account that was already created. So someone's gone in there and just checked things out to make sure. This happens a lot with stuff that I buy from China. They often go in there and just test everything that there's no faults with it before sending it to you. Personally, I don't mind this. A lot of people do. They have a problem with it because then it feels like it's used. But for me, it's just another level there that I'm making sure, they're making sure, sorry, that I'm not going to be getting a faulty laptop here. So the touchpad first impressions, that actually seems okay, not too bad. So this top here, I can feel that it is made out of plastic. And it does support gestures. The panel, the screen is looking very good. So a very nice 3:2 aspect ratio screen, the same as the Surface Pro screen. So very nice. Have a look here and see if my micro SD card, yes, I can see it's listed there. And the SSD both detected, which is great. And you get 38.3 gigabytes free of the 57.1, well, the 64 gigabyte eMMC. So not a lot of space to play with. I definitely recommend adding your own SSD to this. Under the device manager now, the eMMC they have used is a Toshiba 064G93. Now this will be an eMMC 5.0 spec, so faster than the ones we used to see in the Atom Cherry Trail laptops and tablets. The wireless is Intel Wireless AC 3165, which is a very good, decent chipset with good speeds. Here's the memory information. So we've got 6 gigabytes of RAM running at 1600 megahertz. You can see the timings there, and the screen is a Samsung. Gone into the settings now of the mouse, and there are no gesture controls here. So it's not set up as a precision touchpad at all, but it still, to me, feels quite good so far using it. And the keyboard as well, I'm impressed with it. I've been typing on it just a little bit now. And I must say, it feels like a very decent keyboard, one of the better ones on these more budget-orientated Apollo Lake laptops that I have been checking out. So we'll have a look at a couple of photos here, just to get a quick idea and impression of this screen here, which looks really quite stunning. So the brightness at the moment, I think, is on 100%. Yes, it is. So that now is 0%, which is still reasonably visible. So that should be okay for night use. Perhaps even a tad too bright, I would say. 25%, 50, 75, and then 100. Blacks are quite deep. And let's give you a close-up here of that screen. Really nice. Be interesting to see how this screen's going to affect the performance, but so far so good. I haven't really noticed any difference. So I believe I have discovered a little bit of a problem here, a first batch issue perhaps. Hopefully it's maybe just my unit, I don't really know, but look at this. 50% brightness, 75, 100, no change whatsoever. So it seems to just go from 0 to 25 to 50, and then the next two settings do absolutely nothing there, which is quite unusual. If I go into manually slide it here, the brightness, see if that's going to change it. No. So you can see It only seems to start working, yeah, from about 50% downwards, and nothing's happening there. So hopefully they'll have a BIOS update to fix that. Now it's time to have a listen to the 2 downwards firing speakers. Check out how they sound. They sound just like the Lapbook 14.1 speakers to me. They're not bad. They've got a bit of volume to them. You can hear that some vibration coming out of it at 100% volume, but just tweak the volume back down a little bit until it doesn't vibrate like that. But they're not bad, those speakers. So these are the drive speeds here for the C drive, which is, I thought, an eMMC 5 spec one, but it looks like it's 4.1 spec because it's not getting those kind of speeds. Very poor speeds out of this. Look at the read speeds, they're fine, but the 4Ks, oh dear. And 24 sequential writes. So I'm going to be switching over to an SSD. Time to see if it's going to power an external hard drive. It's looking good. You can see the screen doesn't take much to wobble around there, which is a minor con. So that is working. I can see it's accessing the external hard drive there. Just to note as well that the USB ports, they don't have a lot of spacing between the power jack, the port itself here. So if you're using a very wide USB pen drive, then you're going to have bear that in mind. I had the same problem with the EZBook 3 Pro. And also the USB port is upside down. And the other port, the USB 2 port, will also power 1 TB external hard drives. Now in the BIOS, it's pretty much locked down. We've got no advanced settings here whatsoever. You can disable the security there with the secure boot, which I think is disabled by default actually. Boot order, and that is it really. So I'm going to try and see now if I can run Linux on it. Just going to change that to my USB pen drive. And yes, it does support Linux. This is Manjaro release 17. Have a look and see if the touchpad's going to work and wireless and everything like that. It's just loading up at the moment. Okay. Yes. Touchpad's working. I'll need to change the scaling of the desktop here. You can see everything's tiny. And I can see that wireless networks, that is also working. So check out the display. If we can adjust the brightness of the audio, we can. And just like Windows, we can only control the brightness up to 50%. So the battery is a 36 watt-hour battery, and it's giving an estimated battery life here of around 8 hours with the brightness at 50%. Now bear in mind, this is an estimate. I'll have an update of this and more solid figures in the full review. So first impressions of the Chuwi Lapbook 12.3 are looking very positive. The build of it is excellent, the keyboard feels good, the touchpad as well, no problems with that. Now there is an issue with the screen brightness that it seems to be maximum 50%, 75% and 100%, or anything over 50% I should say, just doesn't seem to increase the brightness. So there's a problem there they need to address. The other con that I discovered so far in my time using it is the eMMC, so it's got quite low speeds there. It's definitely not the fastest that I have seen. Apart from that, we're looking at a very nice looking machine with, of course, a really great screen on it. It's super sharp, and I'm pleased to see that it is in fact matte coated as well. I expected it to be glossy for some reason from maybe the press images just made me believe that. So I'll be back with further tests in the full review, which will cover things like thermals, battery life, gaming performance, and anything else that I encounter in my time using it. Thanks a lot for watching, and I do hope to see you back in the channel soon with the full review of this and further reviews on other devices from China.